All right, man, peace. So the Toronto Raptors franchise is really at a turning point in their history. They've acquired a player who, in my view, is the best player in their history. And that includes Vince Carter and a very young but underdeveloped Tracy McGrady. What will they be able to do with Kawhi Leonard? Will they be able to seduce him into staying on their team? Will the city of Toronto be able to seduce Kawhi Leonard into believing that he can be as comfortable there as he thinks he'll be in Los Angeles, assuming that Los Angeles is actually a place that he wants to go? We're going to find out. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Do the Raptors have any chance? Do they have any chance in heck to keep this guy?
I think the Raptors do have a chance. I'm not sure how large the chance is. Kawhi Leonard comes off to me to have a personality type kind of similar to a Paul George. I think that Kawhi is far more reticent and withdrawn than Paul George is. But I do think that with Kawhi Leonard being an introvert, he most likely is very intelligent. So I think that he can be won over by practicality. I think that he can be won over by comfort. I don't think that he needs all the bells and whistles that other players might need. He certainly is not someone that loves attention. So I do think that if Toronto plays their cards right, that they will have an outside chance of retaining his services.
Yeah, I think they do. I think and based off of, me talking to people within his circle, they're going to give this they're going to go into this thing with an open mind and give this thing every last opportunity to work. And, let's say Toronto Raptors get to the East Conference Finals and they win, or they get to the NBA Finals and maybe they win. If you're Toronto, if you're the Kawhi Leonard, I think you just can't off and run. You got to give this thing, out every opportunity to go back and win more championships. So,
especially being in the Eastern Conference, where pretty much the only team that he'll have to be concerned with, at least for the foreseeable future, is the Boston Celtics. Now, if Kyrie Irving decides to leave the Boston Celtics, which I view to be a possibility, not necessarily a probability, but a possibility, that would make the Toronto Raptors with a Kawhi Leonard the certain leader in regards to chances of constantly going back to the NBA Finals in the Eastern Conference, a conference that is relatively underdeveloped. You still have the Philadelphia 76ers, who are a young team on the come up. You'd still have the Boston Celtics, even without Kyrie, because they have a great coach and a lot of young talent. You'd have the New York Knicks, assuming that Kyrie Irving were to go to the New York Knicks and team up with, say, a Jimmy Butler and a Kristaps Porzingis. But Toronto will be right there with anyone. Now, if Kawhi would decide to go to the LA Clippers or the LA Lakers, he still has to deal with the Houston Rockets. He has to deal with the Golden State Warriors. He has to deal with the Oklahoma City Thunder. He has to deal with the Utah Jazz, with the New Orleans Pelicans. There's a lot more talent team-wise out in the Western Conference than in the Eastern Conference.
So I think the Raptors' success will dictate a lot of it.
Frank, I'll say it. Do the Raptors have a chance in hell of keeping alive?
Yes, they have a chance in hell. I just don't think that they're the leader at this point. But I believe that he can be swayed.
Well, we said the same thing about Paul George, and I think they do. He's going to be the best player in the Eastern Conference. They should have a chance to make it to at least the conference finals.
If Kawhi Leonard is still the player that we remember him being, he'll be the best player in the Eastern Conference. If he's diminished even a little bit, there are players that are nipping at his heels. Joel Embiid is nipping at his heels. Kyrie Irving is nipping at his heels. Dare I say Ben Simmons, if he comes back with a jump shot this year, is nipping at his heels. So he's going to have to be the same exact guy that he was when we last saw him in 2017 for us to be able to say with any sort of verifiability that he is the best player in the Eastern Conference.
And remember, DeMar DeRozan, an LA guy, didn't want to leave Toronto because when you play there, you're not just, we talked about this, you're not just a star in Toronto, you're a star in all of Canada. And there's...
Well, that's part of the reason why DeMar DeRozan did not want to leave Toronto. Another reason is that they're the team that drafted him. So there was a connection there in his mind. There was a connection there where he believed that he was owed some sort of quote-unquote loyalty. And loyalty is not something that's intrinsic within sports or the business world.
And there's a lot of money to be made up there.
The only thing I don't understand, what difference does it make how far they go when you were with the team? You've already won a championship with that team. And so it's just a weird thing to me now that, like, it's a great city. Every NBA players love Toronto. And so it's just strange.
Well, NBA players love Toronto because you basically can find a thotty of every shade up there. But you can't find any players that will sign with them.
strange to me that like the level of success is going to dictate that, especially when Kawhi's health is probably going to be the biggest factor in determining whether or not they can get there.
Well, I think there's a couple of things, right? Part of it is the competitiveness, right? How competitive are we as a team?
Sure.
It's not just, hey, I need to win a ring for my legacy. It's just the idea of, do we have a legitimate chance? And if you're in the Eastern Conference, you have a much more legitimate chance because you can get to that level.
And I mean, be honest. I mean, come on. The guy is a very aloof guy, so no one can predict what he's going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
He could have gotten 290.
Once again, that is why the mainstream liberal sports media is so frustrated with Kawhi Leonard, because they can't read him. When you can't read someone, that means that you cannot manipulate them. That means that you cannot entertain yourself at his expense, i.e. troll him. The media is at a major impasse, at a major conundrum with Kawhi Leonard, who they view as an enigma.
$219 million by staying in San Antonio.
Well,
and
they could offer $219 million.
He could have shown up for some games too.
He could have.
Well, he was showing up for some games until Greg Popovich decided that he was going to utilize the media in his propaganda war against Kawhi Leonard, utilizing his CIA techniques. That's why he stopped showing up to the games.
He could have been healthy and not.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Amin El Hassan. He could have been healthy. Now, had he been healthy, he would have came back, and there would have been no need for the back and forth. But let's not rehash a lot of the irrelevant particulars and minutia of something that is in the past now.
Not misdiagnosed.
I agree with you. He wasn't healthy. He could have showed up for playoff games.
Each way, man.
Right, but why would Kawhi Leonard show up for playoff games when he wasn't showing up for regular season games? Was he supposed to act like all of a sudden he was in support of an organization that was trying to hammer him behind the scenes? Was he supposed to sit on the sidelines with a group of guys who, quote-unquote, did not trust him anymore? Why would he do that? Why would he put himself in that situation? That would not make any sense. Beyond that, Kawhi Leonard and his team, they would know that Kawhi would be asked a bunch of silly questions by media members looking for a hot take.
So just sit on the bench and wear.
Yeah, that's your job.
I don't.
No, that's not really your job. That's your choice.
I
don't think it's asking.
I don't think it makes a difference, and I don't blame him for feeling a certain way when people talk bad about you for the whole year. And I'm
not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's right. But his obligation, he should have shown up for the playoff games. Not asking.
Either way.
I think that you would have had a better point, Frank Isola, had Kawhi Leonard been still sitting with the team on the sidelines in the aftermath of Greg Popovich's statements and Tony Parker's and Manu Ginobili's statements all throughout the regular season. If he would have ignored that and still sat with his teammates all throughout the regular season and then not sat with them in the playoffs, then you would have had a better argument than what you have right now. Because Kawhi Leonard already established that he was no longer going to sit with the team, because he was no longer going to allow himself to be used as a distraction by the Spurs front office and by their head coach. He was not going to allow himself to be used as a scapegoat for their struggles. So he did a smart thing by not sitting with the team.
The other part of it is he legitimately can be the best player in the Eastern Conference, right? And in a way that we talk about DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, fine players, all-star players, but their stature is kind of inflated. When you think about the great wings of the game, we don't mention DeMar DeRozan because he's not on that level as the Paul George.
Yes, DeMar DeRozan is an elite level athlete, but he's not an elite player. And every once in a while I'll hear one of these guys on television, Colin Cowherd is fond of saying this every once in a while, whenever he tries to push his LeBron James propaganda, that Michael Jordan would be DeMar DeRozan today. Let me say this, if DeMar DeRozan was playing in the era of Michael Jordan, he'd more likely be Gerald Wilkins back in the late 80s, early 90s, than Michael Jordan would be DeMar DeRozan today. As mentally weak as DeMar DeRozan is, there's no way that you can compare him to arguably the mentally strongest player in the NBA's history. When I say mentally strongest, I'm not talking about basketball IQ. I'm talking about toughness and grit.
Jordans and the LeBrons and the and Durants. When we talk about the great point guards of the game, we don't mention Kyle Lowry because he's not on the level of the Currys and the Westbrooks and the Chris Pauls.
Nowhere near. Kyle Lowry is the most overrated point guard in the NBA.
But those guys kind of enjoyed the trappings of that life, the salary, the exposure. Kawhi is actually that good.
And he controls their future because if he doesn't re-sign, they're probably going to trade Kyle Lowry and begin the rebuilding process in Toronto.
Well, there's no doubt about that. If Kawhi Leonard decides that he's not going to re-sign with the Toronto Raptors, or if the Toronto Raptors feel as if the Kawhi Leonard experiment is going to be a failure, not only are they going to move Kyle Lowry, they're going to move Kawhi Leonard as well. But that pretty much is it. We'll see how things turn out with Mr. Kawhi Leonard and the situation up there in Toronto. But in order for him to be certifiably the best player in the Eastern Conference, he's going to have to be the player that we remember back in the 2016-2017 season. Because Joel Embiid, Kyrie Irving, and Giannis Antetokounmpo, they're going to be nipping at his heels if he shows any slippage. So peace.